Everybody out there, YouTube, town, beyond, however you're watching, welcome back to the dojo. I'm Ryu. That's Age, and we are here to watch Demon Slayer Infinity Castle, the movie number 1. Not unlike Blood Gulch Outpost number 1, which is the inferior outpost, but that's a discussion for a whole other time. This is going to be the first movie in what wraps up Demon Slayer. They're going to be doing 2 more coming in the next couple years here. I believe it was like slated for 25, 27, 29, something like that. That was like the original plan. This came out about this time last year, and we didn't think it would be a year until it became available on a streaming service such as Crunchyroll, because this has been arguably one of the most popular anime in the last, decade-ish, half decade, whatever. So, we assumed that, it'd be out fairly soon after the theatrical run, but, well, they kept having more and more theatrical runs, so good on them for making a ton of money. I mean, what Ufotable is doing with that money is one of the most impressive things in the history of animation to this point. So I expect this to be insanely good. I know I've only heard great things. I've heard some random gripes about random things over the last year, but I've stayed completely spoiler-free, minus a couple random little comedy things that came out about it. I don't even know if they were in the movie. Maybe it was just people memeing, you know what I mean, with a meme edit kind of thing. But I've gotten very good over the last year or so by at keeping spoilers out of my feed and stuff like that. So I don't know, which is great. It is a truly great feeling to not be spoiled on the vast majority of stuff, like we did when we were first starting doing this and stuff like that. And it's just simple filtering in your feed, or just flat out just blocking, blanket blocking certain kinds of things, and only looking at pages that you want. No different than subscribing to a channel on YouTube, that kind of thing. It's only shows you the subscribe to channels, and if you want to look for something else, then you go and look for it, as opposed to just being inundated with stuff that is similar to what you watch. You know what I mean? So it is what it is, but YouTube is making it harder for smaller creators like us to even do anything these days, so it is what it is. They just don't want people to exist. If you don't have a million subscribers, then F you, I guess. But either way, been looking forward to this. 2.5 hours. So the Patreon timer reaction is going to be quite long.
Yeah.
So once again, if you guys are new, we do the timer reactions over on Patreon. It's just going to be down there in the description of this video. Just click on the link if you want to watch the movie alongside of us in a timer reaction fashion, because of copyright stuff and everything that happened with our other channel, stuff like that. I don't risk it. I'm not going to risk it anymore. Timer reactions are a thing that a lot of people do, and that way you can see our reactions throughout the entire movie, as opposed to just the highlight editing that I used to do. But once again, it's not like we're talking the whole time either. We're taking it in so we can talk about it after the fact, that kind of thing. Yes, we do have our initial reactions, and we'll talk about a couple things during the movie, but unlike a lot of reactors that I've talked about in the past, we want to know what we're talking about when we do our review, as opposed to talking through the whole movie about random trivial nonsense, and then when they go to talk about the movie or the episode or whatever it is, they're completely wrong about it and look stupid. This is not a handful of reactors that I'm talking about. This is dozens of reactors that I've watched just to, see other content and see how other people are doing stuff. It's just oh, so this is why so many people are wrong, because a lot of these reactors that have thousands or tens of thousands of followers and stuff like that, they just put out incorrect information because they weren't paying attention to the show. So I don't want to do that. So yeah. Either way, that's just a little TLDR on that. But that's why we do the timer reactions. That's why we don't talk a lot, that kind of thing, because we want to be able to give people correct information during the review and stuff like that, and correct analysis and correct theories and stuff like that. Imagine basing your theory off of something that didn't actually happen because you misheard something, or you were talking over an important spot in the freaking movie or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's one thing to have the reactions to stuff and whatnot, but it's completely another to just, once again, spread misinformation, and then that leads to, madness online. I think there's enough madness online, so I don't want to add to it. I want to kind of fix part of it. So, yeah. once again, all the links are going to be down there in the description, all completely free. I'm not ever going to paywall anything like that. It's just I have to split it because YouTube is YouTube. That's the easiest way to put it. So just click on the link. It'll take you to the Patreon post, and then it's just right there embedded, so you guys can check it out. But anyway, we're going to push some buttons, put up the copyright blocker. That's usually up there. I forgot to turn that on. You guys can see the stupid little timer thing down there as well. But I don't have to block the Infinity Castle page. You know what I mean? It's just us on a web page. So I do have to block the sound and whatnot of the movie, because that's just how that is. But anyway, people on Patreon, we'll see you on the other side of the edit for the 2.5 hours of time reaction. Out with us for that, and people on YouTube beyond wherever you're watching, we'll see you on the other side for the discussion and review section. So yeah, here goes something. Well, alrighty then, there you guys have it. 3+ hours later, because of random breaks we had to take dealing with random stuff. But yeah, it was definitely one hell of an experience. As you can see, even in just this still shot that I'm probably going to use for, you know, a reasonable amount of time. I'm not going to have too many just jump around to bunch of different stuff, because, you know, with copyright these days, and since this is a movie, I don't want to show too much stuff, so showing a couple random stills probably won't be a problem. But you never know these days, who the hell knows. But this is on Crunchyroll, so if you have access to it, you know, you can see it. It's not like I'm showing like an entire fight sequence from the movie or something like that, so we should be fine. I only didn't do it for the Avatar stuff because I wanted to spite Paramount as possible. But as for this, yeah, just once again, quick, concise, just straight off the top, it was fantastic across the board. You know, we talked about how at the end of the reaction, there's like the Demon Slayer storyline is very, you know, generic, run-of-the-mill, whatever you want to call it, but it's still a fun watch. You know, the characters are memorable, all that stuff. You know, the character development, all that stuff has been good. So that's all that really matters when it comes to the storyline. This kind of story has been done over and over and over again, and all that really matters is the character. And when it comes to Demon Slayer, the thing that has carried this franchise, especially in the anime side, you know, obviously the source material is very popular, and a lot of shonen-esque stuff is very popular. That's why Solo Leveling got as big as it did, and it got as much budget as it did, because it's a very cool show to watch. It's very spectacle-y, you know, it's a fun watch for that kind of thing. And when they go when Ufotable goes all in, we get something like this that is absolutely astounding. Visually stunning is the term that I want to use for this. Everything about it, from the unique art style that kind of like piqued me and Age's interest back in the day, was the art style that they use for the sword techniques in this show is definitely different, and something that you haven't really seen before, and that's what kind of like made this stand apart for us, was, you know, that very unique art style they use for the sword forms, and they just kicked it up a notch for the movie stuff, you know what I mean? So pretty much just one big action sequence, because this is, you know, the final battle, the final bit of this series, but it's going to be encompassed over the next 2 movies after this as well. But in the 2.5 hours, the biggest backstory sequence, the biggest story sequence, was really the bit with Upper 3. You know, whatever name you want to call him by. You know what I mean? So that was not something I expected to see in this movie, but for pacing reasons and, you know, how a story and a movie experience needs to flow, it was a very good way to bring people down from that climax and slowly just kind of like curve off that excitement level, and just kind of like level everything off. And I think that was a good way to do that, because if you have everybody up at a 10 constantly, that's when you kind of lose it. You need those ups and downs in the story flow. You know what I mean? It's called like a show flow, that kind of thing. So that was very well done.
You need to have ups and downs. The whole thing of you have to build up anticipation, adrenaline, all sorts of other things like that. It's a big part of horror in particular.
Right.
There needing to be that like release to the stress every so often. Otherwise, a person just becomes numb to everything that's going on.
Right. So that was very well done. Obviously, like I said, the visuals, everything, the art was great. The sound design was very good as well. You know, the VAs did a very good job, at least from the side. Obviously, I'm sure the Japanese ones are fine. They're the best ones out there for the most part. But certain other languages do shine at some points. I remember this French VA got really big for his portrayal of one of the JoJo's characters or something like that. But I think a lot of people argue about VAs too much these days, and most of them do a very good job. Have I heard bad VA work before? Yeah, but it's usually very few and far between, or it's in a show or series that isn't like upper echelon, like where you expect it. You know what I mean? Like maybe somebody given a chance for the first time or getting their feet wet, whatever it may be. Everybody's got to start somewhere. You know what I mean? Not everybody's, Tom Brady straight out the gate, whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? Not everybody is going to give a legendary performance in their first performance. Could you do a very good first performance? Absolutely. But it's just one of those things. But across the board, just over-encompassing, like really quick, just straight out the gate. It was a fantastic movie. It didn't even feel like it was overstaying its welcome. You know what I mean? I know a lot of people can't cope with things that are more than like 2 hours these days. Hell, some people can't cope with things that are more than 3 minutes these days. You know what I mean? So the pacing was good across the board. It didn't feel like 2.5 hours. Yeah, we had our own like personal like age had to go deal with the thing in the middle of it, but even that like 15-minute break in the middle, just keeping up with it, it was totally fine. It didn't feel like 2 hours. It was solid. It didn't feel like it was like wasting our time. You know what I mean? It's like, it didn't drag in any points really. So just across the board, it was a solid movie. It did what it needed to do to keep the story going. The Crunchyroll tag of just violence. I mean, they have a tag for pretty much everything, and I could think of like 6 or 7 more tags they could have put on this thing, but I guess they didn't feel like it. Blood is the one that comes to mind the most. There's a lot of blood in this, but so at the end of the day, again, it was a great movie. I enjoyed it. Looking forward to the next 2. But when it comes to everything that happened in this movie, the 3 major things were we had Shinobu and her fight, Zenitsu and his fight, and then Tanjiro and Gyu with the big like what you call like the main event of this movie. So it was all quite good across the board. The backstories that they showed off, I could sit here and potentially like talk about each one individually, but then once again, we've already been here for 3 hours. We talked a reasonable amount at the end of the reaction for a couple things, and there are a couple other things I want to expand upon there for that. But anyway, random madness aside, we can start here with the Shinobu fight with Upper 2. Once again, you could just blanket statement. Every fight was visually stunning across the board. Can't say it enough. Don't need to, beat the dead horse into the ground and repeat myself and be a broken record. So just every fight was that. It was great. There are a couple times in this fight where, you kind of have that like talk no jutsu moment where it's just like the first time she poisons him, I think they kind of needed to make it seem like that happened his recovery time was faster than it actually was, because if it was as long as his like internal monologue was, she should have been able to kill him. You know what I mean? That's like one of the only minor gripes that I can absolutely say about that was in this fight, the first poison, when he was just like super like, oh, I can't believe something is actually working on me for a little bit. Based on her speed, that should have ended the fight based on the portrayal, at least in this. And that's like one of the minorest gripes I could put out there about this is, she should have had him because of the first dosage of poison working on him the way it did. And at the speeds that these characters move, that should have ended the fight. Even a split second for characters that can move at even these speeds, while Demon Slayer isn't by any stretch of the imagination like upper echelon of fiction or anime, they're still moving superhuman speeds. You know what I mean? So a fraction of a second, or even a second or two that was portrayed here that you can infer based on the storytelling, should have been more than enough based on Shinobu's speed to kill him. He even openly admitted multiple times that he couldn't believe how fast she was. And even when she was mortally wounded, she was able to up her speed to a point where he could no longer perceive her and had to use like an AoE attack to catch her. You know what I mean? So that's like the only like real like in-universe kind of gripe that I can have. And it's, once again, it's not a huge deal. They did it for the story. That's fine. It's whatever. It's just kind of like how the scene played out in what you would call like a real instance, she should have had it. You know what I mean?
I mean, it will. For one, we don't know if she even had him to actually kill him, because once again, like all the uppers seem to have some way of sort of
Yeah, they have a shenanigan, but just at the baseline, whatever, you would think she
but
would have at least
at its baseline. At its baseline, talking is a free action, and that's just like a normal thing in a lot of storytelling, but predominantly anime. If people are talking, time's not passing.
Yeah. But even in those brief moments where you do see him moving and stuff like that, it's once again he could have we still don't know a huge amount about him, how his power functions, stuff like that, outside of what he talked about with his blood demon art being like cold, like ice power, basically at the end of the day. But it's just
Well, from what we got, it was essentially essentially a battle of poison users, because the whole thing was that his blood demon art is that he freezes his blood and scatters it into the air around him. So
Yeah.
you're not only getting frostbite because of the temperature difference, but you're breathing in his blood, and it is slowly tracking with you from the inside. And that was the whole thing with like that Shinobu was realizing.
Yep. So I don't know. That's like the only minor gripe. Like we talked about. Like, you know, once again, talking is a free action, so no time is passing. That is what it is. But just kind of like that portrayal of that scene. Usually, if a character is, you know, making any kind of movement or stuff like that, even while talking, it's generally considered that at least some time is passing. So it's just kind of like a, what do you even want to call that? We're arguing semantics here, but it's just kind of one of those things where, you know, she had that realization that it was working, and with her speed, you would think she could have made an attempt. Could Upper 2 have a shenanigan like Upper 3? Absolutely. Some kind of shenanigan. Maybe not exactly the same, obviously, because they're different from everything we've seen. All of Muzan's upper demons, lower demons, whatever they may be, they always had some kind of weird shenanigan. Like the siblings from the entertainment district, you know, that kind of thing. Some kind of shenanigan, whatever it may be. So I'd assume the upper 3, especially 3, 2, and 1, and Muzan, we know what's going on with him. They probably all have some kind of very specific shenanigan. And, you know, obviously the what do you even want to call her? I guess she did have the 4 in her eye that we saw at the end of the movie. The keeper of the castle. Yeah. She probably has some kind of shenanigan as well. So it will be interesting to see going into the next couple of movies what's done with that. But still, that's like the only like minor gripe with this. We knew going in that we're probably going to have to. There are going to be a lot of casualties on both sides, obviously, depending on how it ends. You know what I mean? If it goes the way I think it is, especially with the way they're playing up, you know, certain members of the core, like the Wind Hashira. We didn't get a ton of like, you know, this movie mostly centered around Shinobu, Zenitsu and his backstory, and then Tanjiro Giyu and Upper 3 and his backstory, which was the last like half hour basically. It was all very good. It was a solid backstory, but we only got little glimpses into what everybody else was doing. And the Wind Hashira, who has a temper, in case anybody forgot, and is very impulsive, he's not conserving his energy at all. So if we have to put a pin in somebody else that's probably going to die on the Hashira side, he's probably top of my list, because he is just killing his energy.
He's
on
bloodlusting trash.
Yeah, he's bloodlusting on trash. You know, yes, he is grieving from the death of the master and all that kind of stuff. And to that end, to talk about that a little bit, seeing the remaining master's children doing what they were doing with the demon guys, you know, and using that with the crow, that was very cool. I enjoyed that for what it is, how they were mapping out the castle and trying to, you know, figure out a way to do something about it is interesting. So it'll be interesting to see if that comes into play at all. Does their map matter? You know what I mean? Are they going to be able to do something with that information? That is something that I'm interested to see what happens with that.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of mattered initially, but then they realized that a map doesn't really work too well when the castle can change at a given time, and also that the Infinity Castle is literal.
Right. So either way, there's only one fight that has been resolved so far. There's still plenty more to get to. I believe it's 2-1 are obviously the biggest deals. Muzan, obviously, with 6 being taken care of, 6 and 3 being taken care of. 4 is her own separate thing. That's not really a fight. That's going to be something more metaphysical. I don't know if there's 5, like if there's a number 5 still around.
Well, we might have a replacement,
like a replacement.
But
that's what I mean.
Of the originals, only 1 and 2 are left.
Yeah,
because the guy Zenitsu fought is the replacement for the old 6, because the old 6 was the siblings.
Right.
And now the chick controlling the castle we saw is 4 now, when 4 was the emotions guy.
Yeah. But either way,
so there could be a replacement 5 floating around here, but the original 5 is already dead.
Yeah. So
that was the pot guy.
Yeah. But the Shinobu stuff was what it was. I will be interested to see if my speculation on, like her being absorbed by Upper 2, since she is a, poison user. She did have that, contingency plan, and Age mentioned it when he came back from what he had to do in the middle of the movie there was he did have that, she did have that contingency plan with her apprentice that came in there after the fact. So she kind of had that contingency plan. So maybe she has something like if I get absorbed, this is going to release from my body and give you a moment of opportunity at some point. You know what I mean? Maybe some kind of poison that is slower acting. You know what I mean? That is slowly going to take him down from within and then give her an opportunity to behead him or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because that was the last major thing we saw from Shinobu before she went off to help prepare the poison with Tamayo to use on Muzan. That's the reason he's in his state he's currently in. Was her talking with the apprentice chick and saying, I'm going to teach you how to kill the demon that killed my sister.
Yeah.
Which we at the time, once again, we're still under the assumption that it was Tamayo, but it was revealed in the movie here that it's actually Doma.
Yeah. So it will be interesting to see what comes with that. Obviously, they had a little bit of a off-screen battle, and she has taken some damage, but we'll get back to that at some point. That whole sequence was well done across the board, so that's going to be interesting to see what happens with them. The sequence with Zenitsu and his former dojo mate, I guess you want to call him. We were talking about it during this. Yeah, upperclassmen. We were talking about it during this whole sequence. Is it's he was just going off about how Zenitsu doesn't deserve this and doesn't deserve that, and how it's a joke that he was named as a co-successor. It's well, you only have yourself to blame, bro. If you had just learned the first form of thunder breathing, which thunder breathing is classic EI jutsu, the sword draw technique. That's what thunder breathing comes from. If you can't learn that, the basis of the basis, then no, you don't deserve to be the sole heir, because you have to be able to pass everything down the line, and the first form of every single one of these sword breathing styles is the basis of it. So if you don't have the first part of it, what good is teaching somebody 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6? You know what I mean? In his case, he knew 2 through 6, and Zenitsu, doing what any heir apparent is supposed to do, make up a new one. You know what I mean? He did exactly what every Hashira level user is supposed to do, is after they get all the teachings passed down, they need to improve upon it and come up with something different to make it more versatile. You know what I mean? And in the case of the 7th form, what he did was compound the energy and, focus into one big ass strike. He basically, the 7th form of thunder breathing was just a vastly superior version of the 1st form, which that's still different. You know what I mean? You might not need to use the 7th form to beat every demon you come across. The 1st form might be enough. That kind of thing. You know what I mean? So just improving upon something and calling it a different form is absolutely fine, because it is different, because it's just more powerful and uses more energy. So that is exactly why Zenitsu was named as a co-heir, because their master saw that in him. Because he could only do the first form. He would probably be capable of creating something new that is the basis of thunder breathing. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, I mean, at its core, yeah, it's just you need to have all of the forms. Someone who's capable of. You need to have teachers capable of all the forms to keep passing it down, but also, Kaigaku or something about those lines wouldn't have been a proper successor because he didn't know the fundamentals, and you need the fundamentals to be able to create a new form.
yeah,
Because all the 2 and beyond are all based off of 1. You have to learn 1 and master 1 before you can start learning the others and working on developing your own.
yeah. So I think this backstory was, well done for what it was. Without going too much into it, obviously, because we've been here for a while again. I don't want to sit here and do what we have to do because there's still a couple other things we want to talk about. But everything here was great. I think arguably my favorite part of the movie was when after he defeated him and the head was like floating there, and then the Tamayo's demon, her like assistant guy, just like shows up next to him and he's like, he's not gonna die. Just you. That face, man. it was
very.
It was so good because it's just like it's that look of just like pure like f you. It's considering how long this movie is, landing on that exact frame is probably going to be almost impossible without like playing part of the sequence, which I don't want to do. But the look he gave him while being upside down, which was what also sold it more, was freaking hilarious. So
yeah, from what we've seen of him, he's always been very blunt and just kind of deadpan.
Yeah.
Like the only time he ever gets emotional is when it's something related to Tamayo's safety.
Yeah, which she's in deep shit right now. So I don't think she'll be making it out of here outside of some massive shenanigan. I mean, she basically gave her life to do what she did to Muzan at the end of last season. You know what I mean? So I really can't see a situation. It'd have to be some major plot device for her to get out of this in any way, shape, or form. But she knew that going in, so that is what it is. But
now, once again, her whole goal there was just that she's already developed the cure for Nezuko, and now she developed the cure in general, not just for Nezuko. Like, they had that one guy that they managed to cure as well.
Yeah.
But she had already developed the cure, and they're working on administrating it to Nezuko and all that. So she just went and worked with Shinobu to develop this poison that was meant to keep Muzan immobilized as long as physically possible, so they could try to drag him into the sun.
Yeah. But
because once again, the master had already more or less was already like more or less fully convinced that Muzan can't be decapitated.
Yeah. So it's kind of like full containment until the sun, being the ultimate enemy, does what it needs to do. But there are a couple like extra side things that I'm kind of wondering about before we talk about this final fight here. Is Elder Rengoku getting off his ass and doing something? Can you guys believe that? Yeah, it's just like the final line of defense with finally stopped being a deadbeat and decided he finally had his eyes open and has finally stopped being a wallowing nerd, and he's hanging out there with the sound Hashira because obviously he can't fight anymore after what happened in the entertainment district, but still. So that was something. I don't think it's going to come to them having to do anything, but the thing that I'm more interested in is like the original water Hashira guy that's taking care of Nezuko is Nezuko just out of the story entirely because they tried to turn her back to human? You know what I mean? So that's something that I will be interested to see if Nezuko does anything in the rest of this.
I doubt it. I feel like it's going to be a thing of, once again, this whole thing is contingent on the idea that, Muzan being the source of all demons, if he dies, all demons die. But I definitely feel like it's going to be a thing where, the conclusion is not really that clean of, Muzan's dead and he's not going to have his like reign over the demons anymore, but that there will still be demons in the world because we have anomalies like Nezuko and Akusa here. Because like Tanjiro even says that like if he keeps evolving, he will be like on par with Muzan in the freaking basically the sun being the only thing that can kill him.
Yeah, and to that end, this entire sequence, keep in mind that you guys can maybe see the timer there at the bottom right of my screen. This was this entire sequence here was the better part of half of the movie. You know what I mean? Well, which is impressive because the first hour and a half there was impressive, but the last hour and 15, hour and 20 was just this sequence and then his backstory that was very good. That was split between the first bit of the action sequence, then the bit of Tanjiro's past that we saw that was actually quite good, and we talked about the whole Ultra Instinct thing and not thinking when you're fighting to enter whatever state you want to call it. It becomes the the classic like Yoda, don't try, just do. You know what I mean? It's the if you think too much, that becomes a deterrent to you in combat. You know what I mean? And in the case of Tanjiro, he's entered the what do they call it? The it was transparent zone or something.
His dad called it the transparent world.
Yeah, the transparent world, which is more or less where just there's no intent, just the fight. That's the easiest way to put it. In Dragon Ball, they call it Ultra Instinct. In certain other series, they call it certain other things. Different kind of states for just finding that pure flow of the fight and not being able to be susceptible to things like strategy and what Akusa was doing here with his very aura reading ability that he had, his intent reading ability that he had. So it was definitely a hell of a way to get that point across, and it was done well. You know what I mean? It didn't feel like it was that long. It didn't feel like any of it dragged. We had the bit with Tanjiro's dad, then we got a little bit more of the combat, and then when Tanjiro kind of like inadvertently broke through to him with it's not like he was like sitting there talking to him forever, but just those couple words that reminded him of his past. And then we got that entire past sequence, which once again was the better part of like the last 40 minutes basically, which everything here, his entire backstory. It was a solid backstory with a tragic end, a tragic beginning and a tragic end. You know what I mean? It's a bit of storytelling that a lot of people have used in the past, and we talked about that at the end of the reaction. Is a lot of this stuff has been done before. The classic Simpsons did it thing. You just have to put your own spin on it with characters that are memorable, and people just want to see the same stuff that they see time and again, but just with a different color. You know what I mean? A different coat of paint, whatever it may be. And this was handled well. There's nothing wrong with this backstory. Tragic events lead people to make impulsive decisions, and it's not like he really chose to be a demon at the end of the day. He didn't choose this like Zenitsu's brother, his upperclassman. His upperclassman chose it. You know what I mean? He could have just let Upper One kill him and died with some honor. You know what I mean? But instead, he chose to become a demon. Akusa here didn't choose it. He just kind of derped into Muzan at the beginning of Muzan thinking to himself, hey, I should make a bunch of powerful demons to, have a bunch of lieutenants, basically. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because he's been around for several hundred years, as was pointed out here. You know what I mean? So he was one of the first guys that Muzan turned, and it's not like he chose it. He did say, yeah, just do whatever you want, but he didn't know what was happening to him. He didn't openly know, like, Muzan was going around and doing this beforehand because he was one of the first. He didn't know he was going to be turned into a demon. It just kind of happened, and he was just so pissed off after everything that happened, and he was in, still that, like, blood-crazed state after avenging his, his teacher and his soon-to-be wife, that he, just didn't really care. That was a knee-jerk reaction. You know what I mean? In the case of Zenitsu's, upperclassmen, at that point, he knew everything Muzan was about. He knew everything that the demons were about, and he still chose to swap sides and be a nerd. You know what I mean? So those are two very different
Yeah.
situations when it comes to intent, and that's why he was able to redeem himself. At the end, he turned his back on Muzan, and we saw that's why Upper One got super pissed off at the end, because that was like his goal, was to become stronger than him. At the end of the day, he just wanted to become stronger to protect the people that he cared about, and that's what he remembered by Tanjiro just kind of like, poking that into existence inexplicably. That's why he basically took himself out, because he was the problem. He was the weak one, so he had to destroy himself to move on. And that's what happened. So it was reasonable enough. But I mean, so I wasn't expecting that kind of like big ass backstory for any of the upper ranks, but for him, and based on everything we got, I think he is probably going to be the one that has the most backstory. You know what I mean? Outside of Tanjiro's ancestor, we've kind of gotten like breadcrumbs of that, whether it's bare minimum great grandfather, based on what we've talked about since we did the last season. It's because
we got a bit of a time frame because of Akaza's backstory here, and that it was about like 200 or so years ago that the uppers were originally created. So we got a bit more of like an actual timeline of that, so it probably is like his great grandfather or something like that.
Yeah. But again, either way, it was definitely one hell of a movie. It'll be interesting to see where it goes from here because of the state that a lot of the characters are in. Obviously, we still have how many core primary Hashira are left? It's the two that are together, right? Two sets of two are together, and then the Wind Hashira is alone, and then his brother is alone, and then freaking Inosuke is running around coming through somewhere.
If you go to the very end, it shows the picture of all of the people who are in, all of the demon slayers who are in the Infinity Castle.
Yeah.
And then Nezuko.
Yeah. Besides just the standard core members that are, doing what they can to alleviate, energy use. But yeah. So, with Shinobu being defeated, and as it stands right now, Tanjiro and Gyu especially he is more out of it because his sword has been broken. Obviously Tanjiro is probably going to do more because he's the main character. It will be interesting to see. The second movie is probably going to encompass the group at the top row here. You know what I mean? So it will be interesting to see how that's handled and how much comes of it. I don't know if they could shelve what's going on with Shinobu's apprentice for an entire movie. You know what I mean? So it might be more of left side of the screen. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So
yeah, this movie was dealing with, it was introducing two, because we hadn't been introduced to him at all. He's just shown up briefly in some of the Infinity Castle scenes and throughout the series. But the main fights were 6 and 3.
Yeah.
The next movie will probably be 1 and 2, and then the final movie will be Muzan.
Yeah. So plenty to get to,
Or no, I forgot. We still have 4 to deal with now because she's 4. So next one will probably be 2 and 4, dispelling the castle, and then that'll drag Muzan out, and the last movie will probably be fighting 1, getting the rest of the backstory on sun breathing and all that shit, because he'll probably have some relation to it being part of that whole family line of the original sun breathers that Tanjiro's family is. And then actually confronting and defeating Muzan.
Yeah. Because I assume if they want to do anything with the Demon Slayer Master's children, if they figure something out and do something and manage to take 4 down and dispel the Infinity Castle, you know what I mean? So that'll probably have
something
something
to do with it. because as it stands, there's basically no way that they can actually do anything to Muzan while the castle is still in effect.
Yeah,
because she'll just keep moving Muzan away from everyone.
yeah. Yeah, and that's the whole gimmick here. Is like he was saying, is like they'll never find me. It's like, yeah, it's going to be impossible because she's aware of everything that's going on in the castle, and if anybody ever gets reasonably close to him, she's just going to shift everything around and get him safe. So, yeah. But either way, I am definitely looking forward to the next one whenever that comes out. I believe it's slated for next year. There are a couple other things I was going to mention when it came to like box office stuff and how, you know, this movie, and we mentioned it at the end of the reaction too, but just to talk about it a little bit here in the review at the end here is this movie was made for $20 million. You know what I mean? You don't have to spend an astronomical amount of money to get a good product, and I think that's why a lot of like the major awards and why it was like snubbed at the Oscars and stuff like that and other things, because is it like an Oscar worthy performance and stuff like that? It's up for debate because of what the animation team put together. You know what I mean? It's pretty much impossible to compare something live action to something animated because of, you know, various factors. But when it comes to just from visually stunning and everything else and stuff like that, it definitely deserves all the accolades that it got and whatnot, because a lot of the bigger time movies that are like you'd call Hollywood A-list movies, not every Hollywood A-list movie has like an amazing story or plot or lore behind it. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like something that's like a spectacle-y thing. You know what I mean? So I think that's why a lot of like Hollywood people were super aggravated with this, because they made a movie at the cost of like what movies used to be made in like the 70s and 80s. You know what I mean? Movies have well past, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars for certain things, and like bigger box office movies that have like the, you know, if you want The Rock and, you know, Jason Statham and all these other big time people in the same movie, each one of those people are commanding a bare minimum of at least $10 million just for themselves, let alone the entire crew and everything else that you have to do to shoot a live action movie. You know what I mean? So you see all those big time movies that like they flop because, you know, they've spent so much on just like the actors and stuff like that. I'm not saying they don't deserve it. A good actor or good you know, player or whatever it may be deserves to be paid. But at the end of the day, you know, you don't have to put that much into it to make the money, because it should be one of those things of like how in sports, a lot of contracts are performance incentive based. So, you know, you have your initial contract value, but if the movie or you, in the case of the player, you hit 30 home runs, $5 million. You get like 50 doubles, there's another 3 million. You know what I mean? You play for at least 95% of the games, there's another 5 million. Performance incentives, you know what I mean? And that's how I think the movie industry should really go, is based on the merit of how the movie performs, based on all of that kind of thing. You know what I mean? They're hedging their bet way up front and putting it all in on the line. You know what I mean? And if the movie doesn't succeed, well, it shouldn't fall entirely on the studio and the people that, you know, didn't really have a lot, you know, had a reasonable amount to do with it. But if they have to give certain actors X amount, that's already taking away massively from the budget and the expectation. And I think there's too much for the like, oh, this actor is here, or this player is here, this big time player, they're worth this kind of money. It's like, that's debatable. I've had this discussion in sports. It's like, look at what the Mets did with Juan Soto. $800 million for that guy. The average contract for a right fielder is probably somewhere in the 20-30 million range over the same amount of time. You know what I mean? Juan Soto is not 40 times more productive than these other players. You know what I mean? The Rock, Jason Statham, pick your favorite actor. They're not 40, 50 times better actors than somebody else that they could get to fill some of these like secondary or tertiary roles that they sometimes fill. You know what I mean? So
the average Hollywood movie is 40 to 100 million.
Yeah.
Blockbusters are 150 to like 500 million.
Yeah.
And then this movie was 20 million and made about 800 million.
Yeah.
In
So
theaters.
think about that. Well, what is even that return? 10 times would be 200 million. So that's a 40-time return on investment. There ain't no Hollywood film that's making 40 times return on investment. If they spent, say, 100 million, they're not making $4 billion. You know what I mean? Outside of like some crazy stuff like some of the Marvel movies, I think some of those got in the $2 and $3 billion range. You know what I mean? But still, you know what I mean? That kind of stuff is those are outliers because of like, you know, like the Avengers Endgame movie and stuff like that that made billions worldwide and stuff like that. But you see a lot of flops these days. Look at what happened recently with like the Supergirl movie and stuff like that. You know, we saw it in the gaming sphere with things like freaking what was that freaking horrible flop that they spent like 400 million on and it made like $4 million.
Concord.
Yeah, Concord, an amazing flop. You know what I mean? So it's just it comes down to everything we said at the end of the reaction. It's just, you know, you have to build a cohesive team that believes in each other, that doesn't step on toes, that knows how to work together, and is working toward that greater goal of putting out a very good product. Are they trying to be the greatest of all time? Potentially. But if you go out trying to be the greatest of all time, you're probably going to fail more often than not. You should just do the best you can and try to be great, and you will end up with probably a very good product that people are going to enjoy. And, you know, in the case of like, say, a team sport, you know, you want to have that cohesive unit of players that believe in each other and want to win and not just be there for the money, which it's fine being there for the money. But, you know, a lot of the fans just point at like, oh, well, we spent $800 million. We should be winning. Just throwing money at stuff doesn't automatically mean you're going to win or put out a product that's good. You know what I mean? So it's just something to think about. And I don't think every studio should be held to this. Like, this is, while Ufotable and what they're doing is like beyond the bar and like what is like the peak of like animation and stuff right now. I don't think every studio head, like the head people, should be looking at this and going, oh yeah, we should be doing everything that they're doing. It's like, if you want this, you have to find the right people that can work together well enough, and you also have to give them time. You know what I mean? Taking shortcuts, like using AI these days, especially, that a lot of these studios are doing, is not helping anything. Time is still needed for a solid product, no matter what it is. From the sporting world to writing to animation to baking the perfect cake, you have to give it time to cook. You know what I mean? So many people want that instant gratification. They want something done immediately. And patience, it's a virtue, and you have to just give it time. Otherwise, you're going to end up with shit like One Punch Man the previous season. You know what I mean? And that's not on the studio. That's not on the studio. That is on the higher-ups that demanded it early and way sooner than they had time for. That studio is capable of putting out reasonable stuff, but they just weren't given time. So guess what happens when you're not given time? You cut corners. Human nature. Otherwise, you lose your job. What are you going to do? You know what I mean? You're damned if you do and damned if you don't in that situation. If you ask for more time, you'll be fired. So what do you have to do? Cut corners. So.
Yeah, I mean, even for the AI thing, freaking, that's still something that it needs more time. I mean, just look at, you have all these freaking people that are going and trying to use AI to cut corners and stuff like that and just get stuff done cheap and easy. But then you have freaking like Hoyo. They openly said they're going to be using AI in the future, and they've set aside a bunch of money and are already putting a lot of effort into trying to develop AI. And so far, they haven't gotten anywhere.
Yep.
But they've also stated that they don't expect to get anywhere. It's a long-term investment.
At the end of the day, AI, for everything that it is, it still has a cost, you guys. It's not just magic. For servers running these things, the data centers people don't like so much for obvious reasons. For most of us in the US, they're being very stupid at where they're putting these things. You know, for those kind of things, you need to use things to your advantage. Like a lot of stuff out in the east, in other places, they're putting their data centers underground and underwater. Why? Because it's naturally cooler there. We're putting our data centers in hot parking lots, basically, or in somebody's backyard neighborhood, and just, you know what I mean? And it's just, but once again, like I said, they have a cost too. It's not just some magic thing where AI is just coming out of nowhere and is just, everything has a cost. There's so many companies that have fired all their employees and switched to AI, and then guess what? All those AI companies, it's no different than putting a quarter into a slot machine. Every time you have the AI doing something, that's no different than putting money into a slot machine in Vegas. When you run out of quarters, guess what happens? You're out of quarters. Every time you pull that lever for the AI, that's costing you money and or tokens that you have purchased. I saw this one guy who was talking about, oh yeah, we went through all of our AI tokens in about 3 days, and we were allocated that amount of money for the month, and they went through it in 3 days.
You know what I mean? Over in the other Discord, Vincent, his company that he's in, works for. I don't really know what he actually does. Like I said, I don't actively hang out with Vincent very often, but he's been talking lately about how they, within the first 3 months of starting this new AI thing, had already used all of their tokens for the year.
Yeah. So there is a cost, you guys, and it's one of those things, and I've talked about it with, say, the self-driving cars. I believe there are certain skills and abilities that humanity as a whole, just people in general, if there's alien life out there, what have you, just people on the whole, we should never lose the ability to drive. You know what I mean? We shouldn't lose the ability to cook for ourselves or do certain things manually. Are there certain tedious tasks that AI could do for us? Absolutely. But certain things like driving and several other things, we should never lose that ability or just leave it to that, because it's kind of one of those things where it's well, now I need it and don't have it. You know what I mean? And I think driving especially is something that we're nowhere near being able to have a grid for electric vehicles, let alone ones that just drive on their own. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of shit drivers out there. But at the end of the day, where we're at in the AI sphere is we have Waymos just getting stuck in cul-de-sacs because of a little green, children at play thing. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. I don't know if you guys ever saw that story coming out of Atlanta. Just look up Waymo cul-de-sac little green boy thing. It's a little, we have one actually. It's just a little thing that you can put on the street, and it's just the children playing here thing, and it's a little green guy with a bunch of reflective stickers and a little flag thing. You know what I mean? The AI gets confused by that. You know what I mean? So it's just
I mean, yeah, it says a lot about companies trying to force AI too quickly when freaking they can't even train the AI online anymore.
Yeah.
There's too much false information going on by the current AI bots that they can't train the AI online anymore. In order to actually get it to reliably teach new AI, they have to go and shred books.
Yep. Because as we mentioned in our intro video, there's so much misinformation out there because of things as simple as what we do. Like I said, I've seen plenty of reactors who are talking throughout the entire damn episode, and then when they go to talk about it after the fact, it's just that didn't happen. That's not how that happened. They never said that. You heard what you wanted to hear because you were too busy talking about something and not actually taking in the content. You know what I mean? And that's where all the misinformation spreads, because they're popular. You know what I mean? I can assure you that nothing that we've talked about today is misinformation. I'm 100% sure about everything, and if we're not sure about something, I wasn't sure if it was $20 million budget, we went and immediately fact check that. That's why I said it immediately. Most of these other reactors that do stuff like that, they never come back around and say, oh, I'm sorry, we were wrong about this or that. Some of them do, but most of the time they just kind of let it go, and people bank on their word as law. You know what I mean? Their favorite streamer or content creator says this thing is true and XYZ. Oh, that has to be it. It's like, you gotta fact check it for yourself, man. Just because you plug something into an AI these days, like in Google, you ask it a question, go to the source that it shows you and be 100% sure if you really need to know something. Because, there are plenty of times where I ask it a question and it's just like, I just want to see what it shows me to see, like, just having just any kind of brain at all. It's just like, yeah, that sounds right. I'll believe that for a second and then really fact check it and go, okay, yeah, I was right. Okay, good. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. But for this kind of stuff, there's so much, even for entertainment purposes, such as this movie, people putting misinformation out there, and then it just causes unnecessary strain on the communities and aggravation that leads to fights and stuff like that, just like, drama wars and stuff like that over literal misinformation. And that's what I hate the most, is just people fighting over two things that are incorrect, just factually. So they're literally fighting over nothing.
Yeah, I mean, like we just went over this as well with the Avatar movie. All the people freaking fighting, griping over the whole Qatar running out of water when she was in a situation where there was literally no way for her to get water.
Yep. Nobody said that we saw. It's just like, oh, Qatar just couldn't waterbend anymore. It's stupid. It's just like, did you look at the situation she was in? She was in the middle of the city that was burning, mind you. So the air was completely saturated with smoke, and there was no semblance of like a water tower or somebody's koi pond or something. You know what I mean? They were in the middle of a street. No water to be had. So waterbender. She doesn't create water like a firebender. You know what I mean? She can't use the air around her like an airbender. She can't move the earth like an airbender or like Toph being a metal bender. Waterbenders are arguably one of the most limited benders. You know what I mean? Earth and water require them to be near water and or near earth. You know what I mean? So,
I mean, technically, firebenders need to be able to breathe.
Yeah,
because that's the whole thing, is they convert their breath into fire.
Yeah. But either way, all the random extra stuff aside that we talked about, it's all relevant to just this situation on the whole, and hopefully, one day higher ups in companies will just become better people. Hopefully, that's all we can really hope for. You know what I mean? There's only so much that people can do in reality because a lot of it is nepotism. Companies are inherited. So, just saying. But as for Demon Slayer here, it's very good. I'm looking forward to the next two movies, as long as they, I can't imagine them dropping the ball. They're going to be given enough time. They have more than enough of the budget. I don't think they need to spend more money if they are able to do $20 million for this. You know what I mean? I can't imagine that they're going to spend more than $20 million for each movie. Maybe the final movie will be like $25 million. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. Because they've already blown past any expectation with one movie. They've already made almost $1 billion. Probably over $1 billion with like individual sales and stuff like that are probably going to happen for, memorabilia and whatnot. You know what I mean?
When you can factor in both movies, they've made over $1 billion. Because Mugen Train was like $500 million by itself.
Yeah. And that was just something they'd already did. You know what I mean? And then they re-released it in the episodic form. You know what I mean? So either way, without going too far here, it was very good across the board. Just keep doing it again. That's all I can really say. We talked out pretty much everything we needed to. I'm very interested to see a couple of the other Hashira fight, what they're going to do with it, how they're going to work Tanjiro back into the story now that he's into the fight, should I say, now that he's achieved, the transparent world thing, and how that could potentially help him in the fight with Muzan, and potentially Upper One being his ancestor and stuff like that. So
I don't think he's going to. I don't think he's really going to be involved with 2 and 4. It's probably just going to be a thing if he's going to be kind of out of it for most of the next movie and isn't really going to be involved again until fighting Upper One and Muzan.
Yeah, it's probably going to be those things where, the big 3 main characters, like obviously Inosuke didn't do much in this movie, barely anything. Just kind of made a couple cameo.
That's what I was going to say. That's like
Zenitsu and
My biggest thing
Tanjiro
I'm
are
looking
probably
for
going
is
to be
more Inosuke.
resting for the next movie for the most part. They'll be making the cameo appearances while Inosuke does something, and then the three amigos will come back together in the final movie, that kind of thing. So
Yeah, like we'll probably see Inosuke fight someone in the next movie, but the biggest thing is probably just going to be that it'll be Inosuke, Tanjiro, and Zenitsu who beat Muzan.
inexplicably, Inosuke's just all over the place nature. He's gonna randomly just derp into 4 because he's super unpredictable, right? That's gonna be the thing. He's gonna derp into 4, and he's gonna be the one that dispels the Infinity Castle.
It's going to be a thing of like, since they were like a part of Tanjiro's figuring out the whole transparent world thing, is Inosuke will have already figured it out without even realizing he figured it out, and because he's just running around in that state just constantly, Ford hasn't been able to keep track of him, and he'll just kind of stumble into her.
Yeah, something like that. So, anyway, this was one hell of an experience. I appreciate it. I enjoyed it. Looking forward to the next one. And yeah, glad we were able to fit this in the summer that we thought was going to be crazy and has turned into not so much, because Tanya is behind on the English dub, and as is Bleach. So we haven't been as busy as we thought we were going to be. So is what it is. So.
No, I mean, Bleach has been behind on just the actual release itself, because it started like a month late.
Yeah. Either way, we'll be continuing Slime, continuing Skeleton Knight. ReZero should be back here in the next week or so. That was pretty much simuldub. So yeah, we'll just have to see what happens. And there wasn't a huge amount of stuff for the fall, so if we do Bleach in the fall instead, then Tanya in the fall, whatever. We'll just have to see what happens. But it was cool to get back to Demon Slayer. Incredibly well done. Got to give them a round of applause for all the work and effort they put in for a fantastic movie, and still 2 more to come. So, bare minimum 4 more hours, I'd assume. You know what I mean? If this one was 2.5, let's just say the last 2 will probably both be at least over 2 hours. So we'll be looking at probably about 7 hours of runtime, which is basically a full season in movie quality. So that's pretty intense. You know what I mean?
I mean, this movie by itself was already like a full season in actual content.
Yeah.
Like full core, I mean.
Yeah. So, either way, bravo. I'm shot. So, you got anything else, Sage?
Yeah, I don't know, like, we've still got a lot of Hashira and not a lot of opponents for them. So, like, while I said, I'm pretty sure Shinobu had some sort of backup plan against Doma because of that whole thing with the apprentice. That's one of the last scenes we saw of her before this whole situation. But also, I imagine Doma is probably going to be more of a big deal than just Shinobu, and her apprentice can take care of, regardless of whatever Shinobu's plan was.
Right.
So once again, all the uppers we've seen have been basically raid bosses.
Yep.
And the top 3 in particular seem to be standout even amongst the rest of them.
Yep. So, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, people of YouTube, beyond whoever you're watching, as always, we appreciate you stopping by and hanging with us here in the dojo for more Anime Night in the Dojo. And this was Demon Slayer Infinity Castle movie number 1, Roman numeral. So, everybody, have a good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it is for you. Have a good one. See you next time.
Hello again, everyone. Victoria here. Don't forget about those like and subscribe buttons. Your support is always appreciated. Thanks again for your time, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future.